Good morning and welcome to the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast. It is June 8th, 2024. This is episode 192 of my daily podcast, just sharing my dreams in real time as they come true or don't come true. I'm a stand-up comedian and actor, sharing my journey and insights in this crazy world of trying to be a comedian. So, as you are observing, if you're watching this on YouTube, this is yet another travel edition as I am currently in San Diego, California. And I drove out here last night after work. I had actually a fun little drop-in gig. A guest set is actually more accurate, in Tustin, California. And a comedian who I met last week in Vegas when I was performing out there at Notoriety Live in downtown Vegas said that he does this show in Tustin and then I could drop in anytime. And I just said, well, I'm actually going to be heading out to Long Beach this weekend for a very big show that I'm excited about. So I could totally come out on Friday and do the drop-in set. So I did just that. I drove from Phoenix to Tustin and did a drop-in set at the gig. So the gig was at this very nice Italian restaurant called the 17th Street Grill in Tustin. And I had an opportunity to do 7 minutes in a bit of a unique comedy atmosphere. So obviously it was at a restaurant, a very nice restaurant in like their back room. And their back room maybe sat 30 people, maybe. There was sort of like a long table in the middle and then tables on the side. So there was like 3 rows. And those rows were only 6 people deep. And so I'm just trying to just kind of do some math here. And maybe it was more than 30. Maybe it was deceitfully more full because that long table probably went back maybe 12 deep. So 12 times 2 just in the middle, so 24. And then 2 times 12 on the sides would be enough, although there wasn't as many people on the sides. There was, I'm going to stick with my original estimate. I'm going to go between 35 and 40 people because I know you all care. And sort of this showroom in the back of the restaurant. And there was an actual stage. It was actually a pretty high stage. The stage was probably 3 feet high, 4 feet high, which is usually not very common in these gigs. Usually there's no stage at all. You're like just standing on the floor, or maybe there's like a little platform you step up on. So anyway, I drove straight from Phoenix, straight to Tustin to this gig. I'd been on the road for many, many hours, pretty exhausted. But my buddy said he would put me up first. So there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 comics total on the lineup. And so my buddy hosted the gig. He did some time up front, and then I got to do 7 or maybe 8 minutes of stand-up. Now, those of you who follow the podcast religiously, last night I talked a lot about how I have been receiving feedback in several different contexts about a little character flaw of mine, or I don't know if it's a character flaw. It's probably more of a personality flaw. Yeah, I think it's more personality than character. And that personality opportunity for growth is that I have a tendency to be very loud. And when I say it's come up in different contexts, I mean that I have had friends tell me just recently, within the last couple of months, I went to lunch with a buddy of mine, and I guess I was just talking really loud just across the table from him. And he actually kind of called me out. He's like, dude, why are you talking so loud? And it didn't occur to me that I was talking loud. So, and that's happened a couple times. So then last night I did an open mic set, and I was talking to the club owner, and he in essence told me the same thing, that I seemed really loud on stage. And not that there isn't times when being loud is appropriate, but the feedback was more or less that it just seems to be a little overpowering and maybe unnecessary and not very fitting for the room. And that was valuable. And then he actually had mentioned, because he and I had gone to lunch, and he also mentioned that at lunch, I seemed to be very loud at lunch. So I've now had two separate friends mention, who I'd been to lunch with, mentioned that even while I'm just sitting at a table talking, which I think is normal volume at just a lunch setting where it's just me and him talking, or me and them talking across from a table each other, that I seem to come across very, very loud. And by the way, those are not isolated incidents. It's happened more often even than that. So now, could I be the type of person who goes like, well, whatever, that's who I am? Well, sure, that's always an opportunity. But to me, I'm also looking at it of going, okay, these are people who are well-intentioned and I know care about me and only have my best interest at heart. There's no ulterior motive for them to bring this up to me. How can I look at this feedback and receive it, embrace it, and have some opportunities for growth? I say that facetiously, but that's honestly what I'm doing. So when I went on stage tonight, it was a really good test because, again, it was a very intimate atmosphere. There wasn't a ton of people. There was really low ceilings. They had a PA system. I'm talking through a microphone. I'm like standing right on top of the people in the first table right in front of me. I mean, it's very tight space in there. And I'm going, okay, how about I don't blow these people's eardrums out by yelling at them during dinner? They had just had dinner, or were finishing dinner. So I was very consciously speaking, which probably is actually a normal tone or a normal volume, but to me feels quiet because I guess my default is blowing people's eardrums out. And so, yeah, I was just very conscientious to bring my volume down, and I did my material, and it all went very well. And I could tell that I was more conversational with the audience and less performative at the audience, which is a very important distinction for comedy and something that I don't think I've always done the best job at. Obviously, I have a tendency to go into over-the-top performance mode, especially when I'm nervous, especially when it's new material. And it can be off-putting. It can be too much. It can be overpowering. And so, yeah, it was just good to have an opportunity literally the next night after getting that feedback and really thinking about it and going, yeah, I do think that this is something that will make me a better comedian and a better performer if I can get this sort of nervous tick, this nervous energy, this nervous insecurity that is fueling this need to just totally overact and sort of overpower my surroundings. And you know, I'm sure it's some survival technique about some childhood thing. You know, I was raised in a very big family, and, you know, getting a word in edgewise, you had to be very aggressive. You had to be very fast. You had to be very quick. You had to be very funny, and louder than seven other people all pining for attention. And so, yeah, I really think that is something that I have probably just, ingrained in my psyche and in my personality from a young age, just being raised in this large family, and I had no idea. And it's taken a handful of people to point it out to me on a fairly regular basis. Because, how often do you actually get feedback from people? How often do people actually tell you, like, hey, you're screwing up? Like, in my life, not very often. I think also I was raised in somewhat of a passive-aggressive family. We weren't the type to, like, just come right out and say what we think and feel. We were a lot more subversive than that. And so it's not common for me to actually receive very direct feedback, and it's actually very valuable. It's been really valuable for me to hear it in different contexts, and to really start to consider how I can use that feedback to be a more engaging, a more dynamic performer, and a comedian that is not, scaring his audience off with over-the-top, high-volume, high-energy, bombastic, aggressive comedy. So, yay, something else to improve upon. So other than that, my set went very well. I did pretty much the material that it's kind of just my new set that I've been working on, and it was really cool because the demographic leaned much older, almost all of them married. So my new material is about how I don't want to get married and how I love being single, and then I do a whole bit about Tinder. And I was a little worried. I'm going, oh no, is this demographic going to be able to connect at all with what I'm saying? Because first of all, they were all older married couples, almost all of them, 50s, 60s, elderly married couples. And my first bit is about how I don't want to get married and I don't believe in it, and I think it is too intense for me. And then I go right into talking about being a single man, and then I do online dating material, and I'm going, I bet you nobody in this room has ever even seen an online dating website. A very, very small chance. Maybe, they're on their second marriage, and, they had to find their current spouse on Bumble 6 years ago, or however long. It hasn't been around that long. So highly unlikely. But what was so cool is all the material still worked. It was still universal enough to entertain an audience of people who, in my sort of egotistical judgment, I was concerned if they would resonate with the material that I was doing at all. And they did, and it went really, really well, and I had a great time, and I was quieter. So that's just something that I'm going to have to be very conscientious of moving forward, because my default is loud. My default is fight or flight, and that's sort of my fight mechanism, is just getting really, really loud. So anyway, I'll have to get some therapy and work through all of that as well, and then hopefully come out on the other end a better comedian. So other than that, I am super excited to be in San Diego and then Long Beach this Sunday. I will be performing on the USS Iowa battleship in a charity fundraiser gig that I will be performing at and hosting, and I pretty much produced the whole comedy portion of this charity event. and should be a lot of fun. So everybody, I am going to call it a day for now, but I love you all so much, and I thank you for listening, and I hope all your dreams are coming true as you pursue them. All right, everybody. This has been June 8th, 2024, episode 192 of the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast. I love you all so much. I'll talk to you tomorrow.